Welcome to Music Connects People, the show about the music and the musicians that bring people together. Our guest for this episode is Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductee Jim McCarty, a founding member of the Yardbirds, the band that eventually evolved into Led Zeppelin. Jim was behind the kit during the Yardbirds' heyday, which included a lineup that featured three of the greatest guitarists of all time, Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, and Jimmy Page. After the Yardbirds, Jim was the drummer in the progressive rock band Renaissance, and he is currently touring with the latest incarnation of the Yardbirds. Jim has some great stories to tell, so sit back and enjoy a quick interview with a rock legend. I mean, we'll start out with, obviously, the Yardbirds, one of the most iconic groups in the history of recorded music, and really the forerunner to Led Zeppelin. And you've worked with some of the greatest guitarists in the history of rock and blues. And what was the impetus for you to restart the group back in, I think it was 1995, after so many years where the group just didn't have a presence?
Oh yeah, good question, really. I think it was a combination of circumstances. I was playing in a sort of a little live blues band again. I got back into playing as a sort of live in a little pub in London, and I actually got brought back into it by Topham, the original guitar player, who was he was wanting to get back into playing blues, and we started playing a sort of Wednesday nights in this little pub in Shepherd's Bush. It was called the Station Tavern, and after a while it became like the Crawdaddy Club in London again. It was really exciting, and I used to get packed out every night. And then we went from there. Chris Dreyer and Jeff and Paul used to come down now and then to see us and get into the vibe. And then we got inducted into the Hall of Fame in '92, which gave us a bit of confidence. And then Chris and I got a call from an agent up in Lancashire who was putting the Animals back together. That was Hilton Valentine and John Steele. And they were going to, do tours as the Animals, and wanted to know if Chris and I wanted to put the Yardbirds back. So we'd had a lot of interest over the years, and lots of people saying, "Oh, why don't you play some of the old songs again and get the group back together?" And so we had a go and had an experiment, and it seemed to pay off.
And it's got to be interesting because this second run is significantly longer than the first run, because, you guys weren't around very long. I think you probably were in Renaissance longer than you were in the Yardbirds by the time the Yardbirds reformed, right?
I know. But, we just burnt out. We just we were doing it so full on, in the 60s. We were playing every night of the week. Somewhere else every night, and doing apart from the travelling, there was the interviews and the photo sessions and everything else involved with it, recordings as well, and it was just completely burnt us out in the end after 5 years of that. And now it's different, since we reformed, it's not quite full on. It doesn't really need to be full on. In fact, it's getting less and less now. I'm sort of doing probably at the most 50 dates a year, which isn't that many. But it's, I'm enjoying it, so I'm not. It's not so hard. It's a chore. It's still enjoyable like this, the way I'm doing it.
Yeah, I saw you a few years back. You were on a double bill in Buffalo at the Trough, which is where you're coming for this preview piece with Vanilla Fudge.
Oh, yeah, with the Fudge,
yeah. I was just watching you. My son's a drummer, so I kind of pay attention to drummers, and you were just having the time of your life. I was thinking, man, this guy's really still loving playing this music, and it's some great stuff.
Yeah, well, it is something I really enjoy, even after all that time. And the repertoire is so good, one song after another is great, and you don't really know what to leave out in the end. There's so many good songs. And the people are great. The people, the audience is, they're always so so gratifying. They come down and have a good time. It's such a great energy.
Yeah, and they really seem to accept. I mean, I know you've had some lineup changes, and I'm glad you brought up Topham, because he's a guy that doesn't get discussed a lot as a guitarist in the Yardbirds. You always hear about Page, Beck, and Plant and everything, but you don't get to hear a lot. Or Page, Beck, and Clapton. I'm sorry, Robert Plant's another guy. But anyhow, you don't get to hear about Topham as much. And actually, you've got an amazing guitarist in Godfrey Townsend right now, who's another one who's kind of flown under the radar for a lot of years.
Well, yes, everyone tells me. I haven't actually worked with him yet, so it's a bit of an experiment. But everyone's telling me it's a great idea. And I've seen him play on YouTube and stuff, and I've spoken to him, and he seems very nice. And he's got excellent credentials, and we'll see. We'll be rehearsing this week, so you'll find out.
Well, they said I'm sure he's gonna come. I mean, we're hooked up on Facebook, and he's been posting stuff about how excited he is to be a part of the Yardbirds. But that really speaks to the legacy of the band and your catalog, and of course the other guitarists that you've worked with. Is there any one of them that was your favorite, that was a standout? I mean, at some point you had to look back and go, "Wow, how did I wind up with the big three?" And I mean, was there any one of them that maybe you're still connected with, or you have a certain affection for?
Well, I think Jeff was probably my favourite, because he was so off the wall with his playing and so creative, and he could make a song just with a guitar riff, like for instance Over Under Sideways Down, just with that fabulous riff he made up, just really made the song. And he was a pretty well a genius when he played. And I think that lineup with Jeff during around about 66, that was probably our best lineup and the most exciting time for the band. He actually was there when we recorded most of the hits, and so it was a good time for the band. And it wasn't always easy with him. He was always very wound up when he played, very nervous guy, and if he didn't like the sound, he would lose his rag, lose his temper or whatever. But I think I got a certain appreciation for him. Though of course the other two are great as well. And Jimmy's been really, really nice lately about the old group, and we had an old album we put out, the Anderson Theatre one that he remixed, and he did a good job of remixing that one, and it sounded really good for the time,
Well, were you surprised that Jimmy decided to try to do the new Yardbirds? I mean, I know a lot of people don't even necessarily remember that Led Zeppelin's first group was the new Yardbirds, and I guess in some ways you were originally replaced by John Bonham, if that's the fact. It was really trying to be another Yardbirds.
Well, we just, Keith and I made that decision. We really wanted to leave. We were so completely fed up with it at the time. I know it's a bit crazy, but it was so full on. We were so shattered, and we really wanted to get out. And so Jimmy and Chris decided to carry on, and then I don't know the exact story, but Chris got sort of shunted out somewhere, and John Paul came in, and then I heard Jimmy went up to some club in Birmingham and saw the other two playing in a band, and got those involved, and They did our repertoire festival because we were booked to play a couple of tours, and because we broke up, we couldn't do that. So they did it as the new Yardbirds. But they apparently Chris Dreyer sent them a lawyer's letter telling them that they weren't allowed to use the name because he had part of the rights to the name, and so they changed it then to Led Zeppelin, which was thought up by Keith Moon of all people.
Did you know Keith Moon at all? I mean, was he somebody that hung around with the Yardbirds, or was he just somebody that was a friend of Page's?
No. He did used to come to gigs. He was a funny guy. He turned up at a couple of our shows, and we played with The Who a few times. I thought he was a great drummer, very, very funny guy, and we had a few laughs. But he was a bit of a crazy guy, and I remember using his drum kit one time for some live TV show we did in Paris, and when we came to play our stuff, I noticed that his drum kit was actually like covered in dry blood. I thought, oh my God, what's happened to this kit? And of course he played so hard, he cut all his hands when he was playing, and all the blood was all over the drum kit, from the cuts he had, smashing the cymbals and everything.
Yeah, I mean, he had a very unorthodox approach, and and I guess that leads to me as far as drumming styles. I mean, who were the guys that influenced you that came before you, and maybe some of the guys that you worked with, during the Yardbirds heyday and afterwards that really excited you?
Well, I thought Keith and Ginger were the best. Ginger Baker, they were the best drummers of that time for me. But I also like jazz. I like people like Joe Morello from Dave Brubeck, and some of the obvious jazz drummers, Gene Krupa and all those guys. And I liked Hal Blaines as well. I thought he was a great session drummer. But I sort of came from a jazzy angle, I think, a bit like Charlie Watts did, liking jazz drumming. So I always think I've got that little bit of swing in my style as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess I never really made the connection, but you and Charlie Watts definitely have a very similar approach to the kit that's very important to the sound of the band. And I think one of the I think we're coming up on 15 minutes or whatever, but that kind of leads me into Train Kept a Rolling, which you're sort of, I mean, a song that so many bands have covered since then, but one of the key pieces that made Train Kept a Rolling such an innovative song and so popular was that drum beat that you had at the beginning. I mean, how'd that come about? And do you remember it?
I don't know. Because we didn't do the original version. We did the the Burnett Brothers version. And it was an idea of Jeff Beck's to do it because he liked that sort of rockabilly stuff, and they did the version with that riff, da 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 da. That wasn't in the original. The original was just a shuffle, just a 12-bar shuffle, and I always loved it. And I thought, well, it's about a train. Well, I'll do a little train rhythm in it, just to give it a bit of flavour, and it sort of worked.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that really is a huge addition to the song, and it took it to another level, and certainly is cited by a lot of drummers as one of the most influential approaches to a song. Even, and some people said that helped usher in the psychedelic era of drumming, and you were a big part of that with Renaissance as well.
Yeah, well, it's nice to hear those sort of things. I was just sort of having a bit of fun and making up, putting in my ideas.
Awesome. Well, I've got one more question. It's kind of a little quirky one. I'm a big Todd Rundgren fan, and his first band, the Nazz, was actually inspired by a Yardbirds song. And I don't know if you've ever been asked that you were aware that there was a couple of bands. Actually, Alice Cooper had a band called Nazz as well. And I didn't know if you were aware that the band had the song "The Nazz Are Blue" had influenced the naming of a couple of rock bands, and if you ever were familiar with their material.
Well, I did know them. I did know those bands, and of course, I do speak to Alice occasionally, and he's a great guy. And it's quite funny because he's been to a couple of shows, and he tells this story about when we played with them when they were. I think they probably were the Nazz, I think it was before Alice Cooper. And he tells the story about when they went on before us and they played all our songs, which is very weird. That used to happen a lot to us. And then he said, we went on and we just sort of completely wiped the floor with them. We just played them as they should have been played. And it was quite a funny story. But I knew about Todd Rundgren as well. Yeah, I knew about his band.
Well, good. All right. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. I hope you have a great time jamming with Godfrey Townsend, and I'm sure it's going to be a great show. And I look forward to catching you in Buffalo. I know you've been here a few times, so I guess maybe you'll be able to get some buffalo chicken wings if that's what you do when you're out there.
Okay. All right. Well, I look forward to meeting if you're there.
All right. Well, very good. I'll see if John can make that happen. That would be great.
Okay, Tom.
Okay, thanks so much, Jim.
Cheers.
Cheers to you as well. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Music Connects People. If you like the show, please share it on social media and consider posting a review. Until next time, this is your host, Tom Jennings, saying, hope you enjoy some good times with good friends and great music.